Hello and assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is Kashif Kamran, and I welcome you all to the day three of the Advanced Audit and Assurance Practice to Pass webinar for June 2021 exams being organized by ACCA Pakistan. Just before starting on with the proceeding of day three, can all of you confirm me that you can hear me loud and clear? Okay, that's great. So let's start on with the proceeding for day three of this practice to pass webinar, and let's see what is the agenda for the day three. Now, on the day three today, I will be focusing on a very important topic, which is ethical and professional issues, and which is in terms of your exam paper is a very regular feature. Even though I have spent a lot of time on this same topic in my previous webinars, whether it is the March 2021 webinar or the December 2020 webinar, which I will still recommend all of you to watch alongside the June 2021 webinar. But because it's an important topic, and it's a critical feature of exams. So I cannot miss this topic from my June 2021 webinar. So we will be exploring ethical, professional, and quality control issues in the live webinar today. Alongside that, when I was ending my day two yesterday, I hope you all remember, we were exercising the use of spreadsheet in a computer-based exams. And how can you make use of a spreadsheet in a computer-based exams? And in what circumstances will a student use a spreadsheet in a AAA exam? So I just want to connect from that discussion first before I move to my main discussion on ethical, professional, and quality control issues, right? So just before starting on with the proceeding for day three, I will just spend 30 minutes where I left yesterday on day two. That was the spreadsheet and uh, what is the purpose and when a student should use a spreadsheet in a computer-based exams in a AAA paper. I hope you all remember that if you were in the day two live session that we ended on spreadsheet, and I want to continue from the spreadsheet onward today and want to spend good 30 minutes on it before we conclude whether a spreadsheet should be used or it should not be used in a AAA exams when you're opting for a computer-based exams, right? So let's get back to that. Can you all confirm me? You remember where we ended the day two yesterday? We were in a spreadsheet analysis. We were using a spreadsheet in a computer-based exams, right? So I just want to start my discussion from that point onwards. So let me take on my Word file first for the day three, and let me set the objective for the day three. Now the objective for day three today is two. Firstly, my objective for day three today, objective for day three, number one, is to guide you about the use of spreadsheet in a computer-based exams. Use of spreadsheet in a AAA computer-based exams. And secondly, I want to guide you about ethical and professional issues. So these are the two things I will be focusing on today. So let's first start with the use of spreadsheet in the AAA computer-based exams. Now, I just want to take a quick recap and I want to have an affirmative conclusion on spreadsheet today so that you know the importance of spreadsheet in a AAA computer-based exams and you know whether you want to use it or you don't, right? Okay, it's the day three, sorry. Okay, so use of the spreadsheet, right, in the AAA computer-based exams. Now, first of all, I hope over the last 2 days of these webinar, you have started to use the practice platform. Do confirm me that. And you are gaining confidence on holding the practice platform and on using the practice platform, right? And even the blank workspace. I guided you about the blank workspace yesterday, and we still have 3 days, right? So by the end of the 3 days, you will be in a perfect position to use the practice platform. The use of spreadsheet in a AAA CBE, let's get to some conclusions here. First of all, When we look at the AAA paper and we look at the type of paper the AAA is, when you look at the type of paper AAA is, the word processor is the most common response option a student will be using in the exam. Now you know when you go to your practice platform, on a practice platform you have a response option which is known as the word processor. I hope you all agree with me. And this is the most common response option a student perhaps will be using in a computer-based exams for AAA. Now, if I take you to that practice platform again, I hope you are familiar with the interface of the practice platform. You go to the catalog, you click international. Under the international, you go to the ACCA official resources. You click on the past exams, and we were doing the September 18 paper yesterday, right? So you assign the September 18 paper, and then you come on the left hand side of your screen, and you start attempting the September 18 paper where we left yesterday. So I'll resume the September 18 paper where we left it yesterday, and I click on the next button so I reach the question. This is the question we were doing yesterday, right? Now on the left panel, you can see the exhibits and you can see the response options here, right? If I can just show you one thing very clearly, you can see the response options given here, right? One is the briefing note, which is basically the word processor, and one is the spreadsheet, right? So in the question number one, because we need to write the question number one in the format of the briefing note, so examiner refers this to a briefing note rather than a word processor. But when you go to the question number two of the paper and you go to the question number three of the paper, the response option will be labeled as word processor. I hope you're all clear on that, right? But in the question number one, the word processor will be labeled as a briefing note because in the first question, you have to attempt the answer in the format of a briefing note. So is everyone clear? Briefing note is the same as a word processor in the question number two and question number three, but the examiner has labeled it as briefing note because you need to answer the question number one in the format of the briefing note. And the second response option you have is a spreadsheet. Now, is there any relevance of using spreadsheet in a AAA paper? Why is the examiner giving you a spreadsheet as a response option? Is it mandatory to use it or is it optional? Let's get to those questions and answers. Okay, so in the AAA, the word processor is the most common response option, right? A student will be using in the exam paper. But the second thing is use of spreadsheet mandatory? Is use of spreadsheet mandatory as a response option? Is that an important question? Is that a question which pops in the minds of the students as well? Is that an important question of which you will be looking for an answer from the tutor? Right, now let's find the answer. Is use of spreadsheet mandatory as a response option in the AAA paper? The answer is no. Now, why? See, there are two things. First of all, you need to understand that in a AAA paper, what sort of calculations are you doing? What sort of calculations are you doing? You are not doing an SBR paper, right? You're not doing a financial management paper. You're not doing a financial reporting paper, right? You're doing a AAA paper. So what sort of calculations in the whole 100 marks paper are you doing? For example, you're doing calculations of materiality, or you are doing calculations of ratios, or you are doing calculations of the trends over the last year, trends over the last year. This is the maximum calculation you are doing in a AAA paper. Do you agree with me? Anything else you are doing in the AAA paper beside this in terms of calculation? You find materialities and you find ratios and you find trends, right? That's the maximum, right? You do in a AAA paper. So when this is the definition of the maximum calculation you are doing in the AAA paper, tell me, can all of this calculation be performed on a calculator? On a calculator. Can all this be performed on a calculator? Like you do in a pen and paper exam. Like you do in a pen and paper exam. So do you have an on-screen calculator? given in the exam on-screen calculator? Can you use it? And can you use your own calculator? Use your own calculator. Is that possible? Yes. So a certain student might say, I'm very comfortable with using the on-screen calculator and I'll not take my calculator to the exam hall. And one student say, no, I'm more comfortable taking my own calculator, and ACCA says so, it's permissible. So I think the nature of calculation in the AAA paper can be done on a calculator, right? You don't need a spreadsheet for that. Am I right? Do you agree? Right? So I think first of all, you need to understand the nature of calculation we are doing in the AAA paper. And then you need to understand that the nature of calculation in the AAA paper can be performed on a calculator. So then the spreadsheet is an optional parameter. But can spreadsheet improve your speed? Can you take less time to prepare your answer if you use a spreadsheet? I want to demonstrate that. And I want to spend 30 minutes where I would show you that is calculator use more beneficial or is a spreadsheet use more beneficial, which save time. Now, for a certain student, you might say calculator, and a certain student might say spreadsheet. If some of you are using Excel in your day-to-day life, you will say Excel save time. But if some of you are not using Excel in your day-to-day life, you will say calculator. Am I right? How many of you use Excel in your routine lives, in your office environments, back at home? You are very familiar with Microsoft Excel and you use it, right? So if any one of you has a capacity or have a tendency of using Excel on a daily basis, you will say Excel or a spreadsheet is a better way to answer than a calculator. But if someone of you have never touched upon Excel or is very weak on Excel, you will say calculator. So will there be one answer? No, there will be two answers. Some of you will use calculator, some of you will use Excel. So I need to demonstrate both, and you find your own answers, right? Let's get to the conclusion here. Now, the last thing in a AAA exam, just like September 18, question number one, where the question where the question was on audit risk, the examiner did ask students to specifically utilize analytical procedures. Specifically utilize analytical procedures. I think you saw this question yesterday, right? Uh, no, not at all, Rabia. It's totally your own discretion. Totally your own discretion. So if I hope you remember the question yesterday, we were doing September 18, and in that September 18 question number one yesterday, examiner was asking students to specifically use analytical procedures. Specifically use analytical procedure. Now, if a question like this comes in exam paper, where in a question on ROM or a question of audit risk, the examiner specifically asks you to perform analytical procedures. Now, what is the literal meaning of the word utilize the analytical procedure? For that, you need to watch my March 2021 day one webinar, because in my March 2021 day one webinar, the I guided students about utilize analytical procedure. So you can take the guidance from there, utilize the analytical procedures. And I even guided students about the marking scheme of analytical procedures and how will you score marks. So I would not spend time on that in my webinar today, because that will be waste when you have something in the recorded form already available. So how will you score marks? So will all of you watch the March 21 day one to understand how you perform analytical procedures and how you score marks on it? My only purpose today is to show you how you do it on a computer based environment, how you do it on a spreadsheet or on a calculator, right? That's the only purpose. So apart from performing calculators for materiality, you might even need to perform calculators for analytical procedures. So that's an extra relevance. So let's get back to my equation. Calculator, calculator versus spreadsheet. When a question asks for when a question, sorry, spreadsheet, when a question asks for this, utilize the analytical procedure, right? Control C, Control V, question mark. So calculator versus spreadsheet. When a question asks for an analytical procedure, let's see which is more beneficial for a student. I'll perform both, and you choose at the end of the day which one will you carry in the exam paper. Let's first start with the calculator. Use of calculator. Now, if you are using a calculator, right, in the exam, and you go back to the question number one we were looking for yesterday, can you see the question number one in front of your screen now? Right now, your examiner asks you in the partner email, you open the partner email, and in the partner email, you saw that the examiner is asking you in the question number one to evaluate the audit risk. And when the examiner is asking you to evaluate the audit risk, examiner is also asking you, you should utilize analytical procedure. And the moment examiner asks you, you should utilize analytical procedure. Now, one student might think of doing it on a spreadsheet, and one student might think of doing it through a calculator. Now, let me first show you, if a student thinks about doing it on a calculator, how would you do it? Now, you need to perform using a calculator, the analytical procedure. So you open up your briefing note. I hope you understand I made this briefing note yesterday, so it's automatically saved. So we write the briefing note to from subject introduction, and I tell you that you have to fill up the introduction yourself. Then we have the requirement A, audit risk with analytical procedure, and you put down results of analytical procedure. Now you're using the calculator, right? And you make a table over here. Can you see the table option given in the header? I am using my cursor to click on the table. I click on the table and I go to the table. I need three columns. One, two, three. I need three columns and I need six rows. One, two, three, four, five, six. So I need a 3 multiplied by 6 table, 3 columns and 6 rows. And I click on it and a table comes here. Can you all see the table? Insert it. So in the first column, I write the ratio. And in the second column, I write 20x5. And in the next column, I write the 20x4, the last year. So I write the ratio here, and I write the 20x5 here and the 20x4 here. I hope you all can see that. If I can increase the font size of this. Okay, I hope you can all see the table now, right? So I inserted the table because I want to use the calculator. Now I want to calculate the ratios, right? So once I need to calculate the ratio, I'll go to the statement of financial position. Can you all see the statement of financial position on my screen? Now opening up, given by the examiner. Right now, I cannot type anything in the exhibit, which is giving the statement of financial position. If I click on a cell, it will say, if I click on a cell and type writing, it will say locked cells cannot be modified. So I cannot write anything in the exhibit 3, but I have the values given. So I'll open up my calculator, which is given on the screen. Okay, let me close the unnecessary windows and let me formulate my workspace neatly. So I need my table in front of me, and with the table, I need my balance sheet with me, and I also need my calculator with me. So I open up the calculator and just 1 minute. I open up my calculator and I drag the calculator on the left hand side and I turn my calculator to a standard calculator like this. Now, can you all see we have the current assets, which is 1450, current assets, which is 1450, and we have the current liabilities, which is 597. So we have the current assets 1450, we have the current liabilities 597. So I'll divide them on the calculator. 1450 in the current year, current assets divided by the current liabilities 597, and I get the answer is equal to 2.43. 2.43. Now that's the current ratio. So I go back to my table and in the current year, I write 2.43. That's the answer for the current ratio in the current year. Current ratio. See, I'm using the calculator. Then I need to find the answer for the last year. So I go back to the balance sheet. I see the last year current assets were 1420. and last year the current liabilities was 547. So I divide 1420 divided by 547 is equal to 2.59. So last year the current ratio was 2.59. So I type over here 2.59. So I found my current ratio for both years using a calculator, and I wrote the answer in the table. The current ratio is 2.43 and last year it was 2.49. In the same way, I go back to my balance sheet, I find another ratio, debt to equity ratio. Debt to equity ratio, and you find the answer yourself. And in the same way, I go to the P&L, I find the other ratios from the P&L, and I keep using the calculator. So when you are using the calculator, you have to pop in and pop out of the SOFP. See, I have to go to the SOFP, I need to see the value, I need to punch the value in the calculator, I need to find the answer on the calculator, and I need to type it. Whether you're using a physical calculator or you're using an on-screen calculator, right? Now, once the balance sheet is done, you cross the balance sheet, you move the calculator this way, and you open up the P&L. Now, in the P&L, you have the values given. Now in the P&L, we have the operating profit, and we have the operating profit for the current year, which is 350. And we have the revenue. The revenue for the current year is 5770. So we can find the operating profit margin. So how much is the operating profit margin? We divide 350 with the 5770 sales is equal to, and we multiply this by percentage. Sorry, just give me 1 minute. We have 350 as the operating profit, and we have the sales of 5770. So that means we have a profit margin of nearly 6%, right? So when you're using a calculator, I believe you have to do an extra effort of keeping the calculator on the screen if you're using an on-screen calculator, or if you're using a physical calculator, then you have to keep it on your table. But you have to open up the P&L, you have to see the values from P&L, you have to see the values from the balance sheet, and you need to find the answer on the calculator and type it over here. So you will find the answer for operating profit margin, and you will find the answer for like in tax effective tax rate, effective tax rate, and you find the answer for like interest cover, for example, the last ratio from the P&L, whichever 5 ratios you want to calculate, interest cover, and you find the answers of these 5 ratios and you fill up a table. Now, once you find the answer of these 5 ratios and you fill up the table, under the table, you will start to do the commentary of the ratios, that what is the risk in the ratio. So for each ratio, you will tell examiner, for each ratio, you will tell examiner what is the underlying risk. What is the underlying risk of material misstatement to score 1 mark? Now you need to see my March 21 webinar, day 1, for the commentary. You need to see my March 21 webinar, day 1, to see how you do commentary for each ratio to score 1 mark. So every ratio with a commentary and every ratio with an underlying risk of material misstatement will give you 1 mark. So you find the current ratio and you convert the current ratio to an underlying risk of material misstatement, you get 1 mark. And in this way, you get your 5 marks. Now, this is how you were using the calculator, and you were jumping into the P&L and to the calculator. You were jumping into the balance sheet and the calculator. So this is the use of calculator, right? So can you fit the table in the word processor, right? Yes, exactly, Yolanda. You will be telling what is understated and what is overstated, right? Now, my perception is that if you are using a calculator, you need to open the P&L one, you need to see the values in the P&L, and you need to punch the values in the calculator. You need to find the answer on the calculator, and you need to punch the answer in the table, right? That takes a lot of time. I hope you agree with me. How many windows I need to open? I need to open a briefing note window where I put a table. Then I need to open a P&L window. I need to see the values from the P&L window, and I need to punch the values in a calculator, right? And once I find the answer on a calculator, I need to write the answer in my table. So is that a number of steps when you're using a calculator and you're using a word processor? So do you understand that the usage of calculator and finding the answers and putting them on a table will take a lot more time than working on an Excel? But even if you want to use it, you can. So can you just do the ratio analysis on a briefing note? The answer is yes. But my perception is that if you do the ratio analysis on a briefing note, that will take a lot of time, right? Is that clear to everyone? So my perception is that when you use the calculator, you have to, that takes a lot of time when performing analytical procedures. This is my perception. You might agree with me or not, but I need to tell you the true story. So that takes a lot of time when performing analytical procedure. No, there is no autocorrect option for spellings, Sayyid Ataur Rahman. And spellings are not checked right in ACC exams, so you're not worried about the spelling mistakes. But don't do much of the spelling mistakes, right? Few of the spelling mistakes is not an issue. So use of calculator, that takes a lot of time when you're performing analytical procedures, right? Because you have to open the calculator, then you have to make a table, in word processor. You need to uh, open the exhibit. You need to open the exhibit. You need to open the exhibit for P&L and for the SOFP. You need to punch values in the calculator. You need to punch values in calculator, and you need to find answers on the calculator. And once you find the answers on the calculator, you need to put them in table on briefing note. So I think this is a lot of steps. But if you are comfortable with it, you want to use calculator, you still want to use the calculator the way I use it, you can. But I believe use of calculator on the screen for ratio analysis takes a lot of time over the use of spreadsheet. No, you just need to show the answer of the ratio, right? Not the formula of the ratio, Mohit. So is everyone clear how we use the calculator? Have I demonstrated it rightly in front of the screen that how we use the calculator? And how I jumped between the P&L and the balance sheet and the briefing note, and how I made the table in the briefing note and punched the answers in the briefing note? Are you all comfortable with that step-by-step analysis, everyone? Right? Now, if you're using a spreadsheet for analytical procedures, that's much better. See this. I go back to my question and I erase everything from here, what I just did, right? I just erase this table from here. I delete the table. And once I delete the table, I have my briefing note ready. Briefing note 2 from subject introduction. A, audit risk with analytical procedure, result of analytical procedures, right? And I go back to my P&L. Can you see my P&L here, which is given by the examiner, exhibit number 4? I copy this P&L, copy, and I go to my spreadsheet, which I was using yesterday. And in my spreadsheet, I paste the P&L. Yesterday, I pasted the balance sheet, right? So I paste the P&L. See, my P&L has been pasted in the uh, spreadsheet. Now, once my P&L has been pasted in the spreadsheet, what will I do? It's so easier. Now, I will simply have the values. Over here, I will put working notes. And instead of the working, in the other columns of the working notes, I will put 20x5 and 20x4. I copy this, Control C, and I put it over here, Control V. Now I will show examiner the proper working, right? So Just give me 1 minute. I can reduce the size of the column so it can fit on one page. Okay, now you can see it, right? So uh, I have the tax expense, right? You can see the tax expense here, which is 64 and 60. All of you can see that tax expense. So, and I have the profit before tax, given to me, right? The profit before tax is 322 and 240. So I can find the effective tax rate for both years. And I can write over here working. I did two workings yesterday. I hope you remember that. Working one, working two in the balance sheet. You remember that in the day two. I did told you about how you copy paste the balance sheet in P&L yesterday in my day two webinar. So I'm not repeating that. Please watch it. So I did working two, one and two yesterdays, right? So this is the working three. I simply pressed the control C in the exhibit, and I came to my spreadsheet and I pressed control V and it automatically pasted. Control C, control V. Okay, so I'll do working three. I'll write working three here. The working three is for the tax rate, effective tax rate, and I close the bracket, and over here I'll write my answer. I can increase the font size to 12, and I write my answer for the effective tax rate is equal to 64 divided by 322 multiplied by 100. So I find the effective tax rate here. Just 1 minute. Is equal to 64 divided by 322. I think one value is negative, right? So that's the reason it's giving. This is equal to minus 64 divided by 322. Yes, so I just need to say is equal to 64 divided by 322 multiplied by 100, and I find the value 19.875%. So that's the value, right? Then in the next column, I say is equal to 60 divided by 240 into 100, and I find the value 25. So the effective tax rate has gone down from the last year. Can you all see that? The effective tax rate has gone down over the last year. I can just highlight this for the examiner. Now, can the examiner see my working? Can the examiner see my working three for tax rate? How I found 19.87 and 25. Can he click on my cell and find the formula I used? Can he also see the formula I used? Yes, he can. I can just change this to a two decimal spaces, right? Like this. Now, when I do my ratio analysis on the spreadsheet with the working three and working two and working one, and I go back to my spreadsheet right over here, I don't need to put the table. I will say result of the analytical procedure. Yesterday, I show you how I put the result of current ratio. I hope you remember that. And in the result of the current ratio, I refer to the working one. Now, for example, my second is the tax expense. I'm working today, tax expense. So I need not to put a table over here. I will just increase the font size to heading 2. I'll put the tax expense here, and I simply tell examiner after my ratio, the tax expense, has reduced over the last year as shown in working 3 of the spreadsheet. So do I need to put the values? Do I need to put the values? So the tax expense has reduced over the, the effective tax rate. The effective tax rate, which I calculated, the effective tax rate, should be the heading, tax rate. The effective tax rate has reduced over the last year as shown in the working tree in the spreadsheet, which indicates that the tax expense and the tax liability could be understated. Now see, am I putting the values? Will the assessor checking my paper go to the working tree and check the answer? Will he check it has reduced from the last year? Right? So when I have the values in the spreadsheet, I will just refer to the working number, and my marker who is checking my paper can go back and check the working tree and can see the tax rate has fallen down over the last year. Will that save my time when I'm doing the commentary? So on my spreadsheet, I can do my workings, and once I complete my workings, I can come to the briefing note and I can just write the answers and identify what is understated and what is overstated. Right? Is that clear to everyone? Is that saving time over the use of calculator? So in the spreadsheet, when I have the P&L and the balance sheet, I can simply show the workings to the examiner. Right? You can work here on the working number 4 like this, working 4, and in the working 4 you can find the operating profit margin, right? You can find the operating profit margin in the working number 4, the same way I found it like the effective tax rate, and you can show examiner this is the operating profit margin. Sorry, the operating profit margin is in the next line, so control X and control V. So you can show examiner this is the operating profit margin. You can calculate the operating profit margin and refer it as working number 4. You can change the color. See, Mohit Sheikh, you need to do an analysis yourself. I have guided you about how you use a calculator and find the answer and punch them on a table. And I've also shown you how you copy paste the values on a spreadsheet, the balance sheet and the P&L. Because when you have pasted the balance sheet and P&L on the spreadsheet, you are not changing the windows, right? You have everything on one window. See, you have everything on one window. You have the balance sheet yesterday, you have the P&L today. It's on the one window. I just need to work on one window and find the answers. I'm not moving windows. When I was using the calculator, I was moving windows. I was seeing the values coming back to the calculator. I was typing the answer in the calculator and going back to the briefing note, right? So do you find how I use the calculator and how many windows I shifted, everyone? And when I was working on a spreadsheet, I simply copy pasted the financial data on a spreadsheet and I converted the financial data into working 1, working 2, working 3, working 4. And when I find all my 5 ratios on the spreadsheet, I'll go back to my briefing note, and in the briefing note, I'll start writing my answer, just like I did over here, telling examiner the references to the working number 1 and working number 2. Is that clear to everyone? No, you need to copy paste the entire financial data, Mohit, and then you can use the selected one for your analysis. You have to copy the entire, and you can use the selected one, right? Because obviously you're not using the full balance sheet and full P&L. You're just finding a selected 5 ratios from the data, whichever 5 you want to find. So you have the balance sheet given, copy that. You have the P&L given, copy that. Now in the P&L and in the balance sheet, you need to find 5 ratios of your choice, whichever 5 ratios you want to work on, and you show the working to the examiner. And when you come back to the briefing note, in the briefing note, you do the commentary on those ratios by giving references to the working numbers. I did give references to the working number yesterday on the day 2, and I did give reference to the working number today on the day 3. I hope that's clear to all of you. So you need to find, Mohit and all the other students, which option is better for you. Will you use a calculator and make a table on a briefing note, as I did first? Or will you copy paste the data in a spreadsheet? You will do the working in the spreadsheet and you will then come back to the briefing note and start doing the commentary. Is that clear? Yes, spreadsheet will only be used, Mohit, when the question asks for analytical procedures, right? And that is something I've been guiding you for the last 30 minutes. That when a question asks for analytical procedure, is it better to use a calculator or a spreadsheet? I hope you're all clear on that, right? There is no method recommended by the examiner. The examiner is open to both methods. You can use the method 1, Bahaval, you can use the method 2, right? You need to find which method suits you. So is everyone clear that you have two methods? Either you use a calculator finding the results of analytical procedure, or you use a spreadsheet finding the results of analytical procedure. But when you are using a spreadsheet, things are easier because you just need to copy paste. You will copy paste the financial data. You will copy paste the financial data in the spreadsheet, Number one. Number two, you will work on ratios in spreadsheet. You will work on ratios in spreadsheet, giving working giving working note numbers, which I have demonstrated. And once you work on your ratios, giving working note numbers, you will move back to briefing note. You will move back to the briefing note. You will move back to the briefing note and start commentary on ratios by giving references to the working note number, by giving references to working note numbers. So these are just 3 steps. When I was using calculator, they were like 3 and 3, 6 and 1, 7. 6 steps, and half the steps when you're using the spreadsheet. Yes, Tayyab Nadeem, you're allowed to use your own calculator in a computer-based exams, but if you are giving a remote invigilated exams, you are not allowed to use a rough paper. But in a computer-based exam at a center, you are allowed to use a rough paper, which is given to you by the invigilator in the exam hall. So the only difference between a remote invigilated exam and a center-based computer-based exam is that you can use a rough paper in a center-based exam, but you cannot use a rough paper in a remote invigilated exam. Is that clear? So have you find how I use a spreadsheet for analytical procedure and how I use calculator for analytical procedure? And will you have your own conclusions? Some of you will use a calculator still, and some of you will use the spreadsheet. So every student will have to take his or her own decision. Is that right? So when you are doing the calculation for materialities in exam paper, what will you use? When you are doing the calculation of materiality, what will you do? Will you use a calculator? Definitely. For materialities, you have to use the calculators, right? But for the analytical procedure, some of you might use the calculator and some of you might use the spreadsheet. So any one of you who is good at Excel, please use spreadsheet. But if you are bad at Excel, you still have time. You have paper on the 7th of June. You have so much time. Practice makes you perfect. So will you watch the recording of the day 3? Will you see how I performed calculations using a calculator and how I performed calculations using a spreadsheet? And then will you find your own conclusions? Which one will you use on the 7th of June when you have your actual triple exams? Is that clear to everyone? Right? Just one last thing before I move to the main agenda today. You go back to the computer-based exams. I even guided you yesterday that when you write an answer on a briefing note like this, and you simply put across, your answer is automatically saved, right? So when you write an answer and you put a cross, your answer is saved. It will not go anywhere. On a spreadsheet, whatever you have written on the spreadsheet, you cross it, the answer is saved. So whatever you write on a response option is automatically saved. It will not disappear. So once you complete your question number 1 and you have wrote your answer in the response options, your question has ended. You will click the next button and you will come to the question number 2, section B. You start the section B, and again in the section B, you write your answer in the response option given. You complete the section question number 2 and you press the next button and you go to the question number 3. And in the question number 3, again you type your answer in the word processor and you complete your answer. And once you have completed the question number 3 and you press the next button, automatically a screen will come in front of you which will ask you end exams, right? So currently I have attempted the question number 1. Can you see it's given over here in the summary window? The question number 1 attempted, and the question number 2 and 3 not attempted. But in a real exam, because you will attempt all the 3 questions, so it will say question number 1 attempted, question number 2 attempted, question number 3 attempted. Can you all see that? And can you see over here end exams just at the lower left side of the window? Can you see end exams here? End exams. So you click on the button end exams and your exam ends and you can exit from the exam hall. I hope that's clear to all of you if you don't know about it. So once you complete all the 3 questions, you come to a summary screen, and the summary screen tells you you have attempted all the 3 questions, and then you can move back to the end exam. You click the button end exams. Are You have chosen to end exams. If you continue, you will not be able to return to the exams. Are you sure you want to end exams? Yes. And your exam gets over. Are you sure you want to end exam? See, the computer is asking you 2 times. Are you sure you want to end exams? Yes. And your exam gets over. See, your exam is now complete. That's how you complete your exams in a realistic environment. Is that clear to everyone now? So you do the question number 1, your answer is automatically saved. You go to the question number 2, your answer is automatically saved. You go to the question number 3, your answer is automatically saved. You click the next button, and you will come to a summary screen, and the summary screen will tell you that you have done all the 3 questions. You will say end exams. The computer in courtesy will ask you, are you sure you want to end exams? You say yes. Again, the computer will ask you, are you sure you want to end exams? You will say yes, and the exam gets over. And your answers have been saved and has gone to ACCA. Is that process clear to everyone? Are you gaining more confidence now on more features of the computer-based exams, everyone? Yes, the double check is a great feature, right? Because most of the times the students are sleeping in the exam hall and they can mistakenly say end exams. So the double check is really a good feature. So even if a student is sleeping in the exam hall, can get awake with a double check. So is that good? So can we move out of the use of analytical procedure today, and we move to the main agenda? So I hope you got some benefit of use of spreadsheet in a AAA exams. So it's not mandatory that you use a spreadsheet in AAA exams, but if you want to use it for analytical procedures, you can. But if you find spreadsheets difficult, you can make a table in a briefing note and you can use the calculator. But for the materiality calculations, you have to use the calculator, whether you use the on-screen calculator or you use your own calculator. Give me an answer, all of you. With which calculator are you more used to? Are you finding the on-screen calculator better or your own calculator? Okay, your own calculator. Most of you are saying own calculator. Okay, that's good. So that means you will be taking your own calculators to the exam centers if you're going for exam centers, and if you're going for remote invigilations, again, you're taking your own calculators. Okay. And please, I've been guiding you since yesterday that watch my March 21 webinar, because there are questions from student. What's the difference between audit risk and risk of material misstatement? I've already answered them in my March 21 webinar day 1. I encourage that to all of you to watch it. So I think you didn't attend it the day 2 yesterday when I encouraged to watch the March 21 webinar. So please, if you think that you need to gain knowledge on audit risk and ROM and the marking scheme of the analytical procedure, every such thing is given in the March 21 webinar. So please make a habit of watching the March 21 webinar, the day 1, which I guided you yesterday. Is that clear to everyone? We are moving to the main agenda now. Let me just finish it off. We take the next page and we start with the main agenda for the day 3. The main agenda for day 3 today is to work on ethical and professional issues. And I will repeat this again, right? That my previous 2 webinars, March 21 and December 20, which is on my YouTube channel, you need to watch them for your preparation of June 21 exams. You cannot just say, I'll rely on the June 21 webinar and I go to the exam hall. The June 21 webinar is more focused on the computer-based environment and guiding you about how you handle the computer-based environment. The previous 2 webinars were more content-based, more technical. They were telling you about the marking schemes. So I think the previous 2 webinars along with this webinar, that is a total of 45 hours. And this 45 hours will be really value adding for all of you. I think I've repeated this on day 1, even on day 2, and I'm still repeating it on day 3 because there might be many students who are taking the day 3 as the day 1 for the live webinars, right? Okay, let's start with the main agenda, ethical and professional issues. Okay, I'm moving back towards my PowerPoint presentation for day 3. And on the day 3, my previous webinars. I have covered ethical, professional, and quality control issue in my March 21 webinar. You can see the hyperlink here. And I have covered the ethical, professional, and quality control issue in my December 20 webinar. The hyperlink is here. So I will not repeat stuff which I've covered in my previous webinar because you have an opportunity to watch them. So would you like me to repeat things? Would you like me to discuss things which I've already discussed in the March 21 and December 20? Or do you have an opportunity to click on the hyperlink and watch it and I discuss something new with you, right? So please make a habit of this of watching the previous webinar. Don't be lazy, right? Saying we cannot watch the previous webinar, as Sayyid Tahir Imam is saying both, because I think you are lazy. You need to go back, watch the previous webinar along with you. You have exams on 7th. The good thing is my webinar is being held early. So even my webinar finishes on the 1st of May, you have exams on 7th of June. So can you really benefit from the webinar after it gets completed on the 1st of May? Can you still watch the recordings of all the 5 days and the previous webinars? Can you do an excellent preparation up to the 7th of June? You can, right? So that's how you're going down with. Okay, now moving towards the agenda. Articles. For in terms of preparing for the topic ethical, professional, and quality control issues, there are two articles which you should read. One article is Exam Technique Article Part 1 Ethics, and one article is Quality Control, a Perpetual Current Issue. These articles are given to you in the handout section of the webinar. You can download them from there, and it has already been shared on the student WhatsApp groups. I will also cover the do's and don'ts of examiner. What students do right and wrong when they're answering an ethical and professional question in exam paper. I will be doing two questions with you. One is December 18, question number 3B, that is on the practice platform. And I will be doing September 18, question number 1D. Again, that's on the practice platform. So I'll do two questions purposely on the practice platform to encourage you to use the practice platform. And at the end of the day, what is your homework? Your homework is complete the questions I have discussed during the webinar and also watch the previous webinar. So that will be your homework. So let's start with the journey of day 3. Let's start to discuss ethical and professional issues, and let me guide you all what you need to know about ethical and professional issues. Okay, let me take on my Word file. Let's start with the analysis and start with the exam papers, December 18 and September 18. Okay, now first thing, there is this topic, ethical, professional, and quality control issues. Go down. In my June 21 webinar, which is today, I am discussing only ethical and professional issues. But if you want to have an understanding of the quality control issues, you need to jump back and you need to watch the March 21 plus the December 20 webinar, because I have comprehensively covered the quality control issues in my previous two webinars along with ethical and professional issues. So I'm not touching upon the quality control issues this time because I just want to refine the understanding of ethical and professional issues in my webinar today. Now, all of you know that ethical and professional issues is a very common jargon in the AAA paper, is a very very common jargon in AAA paper. Am I right? Do you agree with me? If you have started practicing for the exams, right? So ethical and professional issues or matters is a very common jargon in the AAA paper. Now it is next to impossible. It is next to impossible that you find an exam sitting without ethical and professional issues. So in every exam sitting, whether for less marks or for more marks, you do find ethical and professional issues as a question. Now, how important this topic is from an examination point of view, You must have realized that because it almost comes in every single exam setting. And it is such an important jargon which you should understand. Now, first of all, as a student, you need to understand whenever the examiner asks you evaluate or examiner asks you explain ethical and professional issues or ethical and professional matters and recommend actions. This is a very common question, right? Which comes in exam paper. Evaluate or explain ethical and professional issues or matters and recommendations. Now, when you get this question and you are attempting this question back at home and in the live webinar today, try to understand what this question expects from you. What is the expectation of this question? Expectation of this question. Let's find the answer. The first expectation of this question is from all of you is issues or matters. And the second expectation of this question from all of you is actions. Which student will score good marks on this question? A student who evaluates the issues or matters, or a student who writes the action, recommends the action. So a student who recommends the action and a student who evaluates or explain the matter. Now try to understand one thing very carefully. For example, when a question asks you explain or the question asks you evaluate the issue, whether it is an ethical issue or a professional issue, or the question asks you to evaluate or explain ethical matter or a professional matter, whatever that is. A lot of time, the student don't explain or evaluate the matter carefully. I was discussing this yesterday. I hope you will all agree with me that whenever you need to explain something and whenever you need to evaluate something in a AAA paper, whatever you are evaluating in a AAA paper, whatever you are explaining in a AAA paper, you need to develop your point reasonably. Am I right? Did I guided you yesterday when I was discussing business risk with you? You need to develop your point reasonably. And when you're developing your point reasonably, that's like 3 to 4 sentences. 3 to 4 sentences is a good enough sentences to develop your point reasonably for 1 mark, because every ethical issue or every professional issue is worth 1 mark. So every ethical and professional issue is worth 1 mark. So a 3 to 4 line sentences will be good to develop your point reasonably and to justify that you are explaining. Secondly, it should be sync to case. When you're writing your point, it should not be out of case. It should be synced to case. Your answer, when you're writing your answer should be synced to case. Your answer should be extracted out of the case. That is a wonderful answer. So when you sync your answer to the case study, when you extract your answer out of the case study and you develop your point reasonably, you will get 1 mark. Now, for example, you get to a situation in an exam paper where the question says you are a manager. You are a manager you are a manager for the audit client XYZ company. So you are a manager for an audit client XYZ company, right? And you are currently performing audit of the financial statements. You are currently performing the audit of the financial statements. You are currently performing the audit of the financial statements. The management of XYZ company has asked you to prepare the financial statements for this year audit as the finance manager has left in emergency. full stop. For example, this is just a situation, right? Just to guide you. This is just a layman situation, right? Don't ask me questions on this situation because I just created a fabricated situation, right? You are a manager, right? In a client XYZ, and you're currently performing the audit of the financial statements. The management of XYZ company has asked you to prepare the financial statements along with the audit of the financial statement because the finance manager is left in an emergency, whatever that is. Now you write an answer, and you need to if you need to explain the ethical issues. For example, explain the ethical issue. Explain the ethical issue and recommend action. For example, question mark. Now, just want to guide you how you develop a point before I take you to an actual exam paper. Now, for example, you're writing an answer and you start to write an answer and you say, okay, there is a self-review threat. You put a heading. That's the best way to present an answer in an exam paper, right? You put a heading, self-review threat, like this. And under the self-review threat, you start explaining your answer. You will say, preparing the financial statements, preparing the financial statements alongside performing the audit alongside performing the audit of can all of you hear me? Okay, that's great. So there was just a 2 minutes break due to a disconnectivity issue, and we are back live, right? So I hope you're all there. And we were in the middle of a discussion. I give you a short scenario. I hope you recall that scenario. And we were discussing the self-review threat, right? So when you say a self-review threat and you develop a point on self-review threat, you say Preparing the financial statement alongside performing the audit of financial statement give rise to a self-review threat. Give rise to a self-review threat, full stop. And after this, a student immediately writes, there should be two different teams for audit of financial statement and for preparing financial statements. Full stop. And you come out of the exam hall. Look at the answer of the student. Look at this first answer of a student here. The first one. This is not at all an impressive answer. Look at the second answer and tell me which is better. The second student start with the same sentence right over here. Control C, Control V, and he says, will give rise to a self-review threat, full stop, because the audit team will be reluctant. The audit team will be reluctant to review their own work later in the audit. The audit team will be reluctant to review their own work. That is the financial statements. That is the financial statements later in the audit. So the audit team will be reluctant to review their own work. That is the financial statements later in the audit. So that is the reason it will give rise to a self-review threat. So has the student justified why it is a self-review threat? Because, can you look at this word because over here, which was missing in the first case? So is the second answer better than the first answer because the second answer has a because, which was not in the very first case? So just telling it is a self-review threat is useless till the time you tell why it is a self-review threat, because the audit team will be reluctant. This reluctant is very important here. Reluctant to review their own work later in the audit, full stop. And then you tell if XYZ is a non-listed company, the financial statements could be prepared with a use of a different team for audit and a different team for preparing financial statements alongside a second partner review, alongside a second partner review, alongside a second partner review of the engagement. Now, which is a more impressive answer? The first one or the second one? Because the question was not telling me whether it is a listed company or a non-listed company. So I tell examiner if XYZ is a non-listed company. You just take one assumption in exam, right? Not two. I just take one assumption. If XYZ is a non-listed company, and I wrote my safeguard because the question was silent. Look at the third answer. Tell me, is that a good answer? The third answer, the student copy pasted everything from here and he take it to number 3, copy paste, Control C, Control V. And this was a student who is a place winner student. He says preparing financial statement will give rise to a self-review threat because the audit team will be reluctant to review their own work, full stop, later in the audit, full stop. Because he was a place winner student, he went on to explain something, full stop. Moreover, preparing financial statements is a management responsibility, and if the auditor prepares the financial statement, it if the auditor prepares the financial statement, the auditor will assume management responsibility. The auditor will assume management responsibility, full stop. Moreover, see the student, brilliant student. He says, I want to be a place winner. Moreover, preparing financial statement is a management responsibility. Is that important? And if the auditor prepares the financial statement, the auditor will assume the management responsibility. Now, is it a better student? Definitely. And then he says, if XYZ is a non-listed company, the financial statements could be prepared with different teams and second partner review. However, it is prohibited to assume management responsibilities. It is prohibited to assume management responsibilities, full stop. Even though I can have different teams, right? I hope my voice is getting through to all of you. Even though even though I can have different teams, but I'm telling examiner, however, it is prohibited to assume management responsibilities. So eventually, can I prepare the financial statements and do the audit at the same time? Perhaps no, because assuming management responsibilities is prohibited. Now, who is a good answer? Which is a good answer? Let's see the marks. The first student will only get 0.5 marks for telling the threat max, and there would be two different teams for audit and preparing the financial statement. It's quite a vague statement, two different teams not explaining whether it is a listed company or a non-listed company. Maximum you will get a half a mark for the safeguard. So the maximum marks you will get is 1 mark in the first situation. In the second situation, because you explained self-review thread wonderfully, you will get your full 1 mark here. And because you explained the safeguard very well, you will get an extra 1 mark here. 1 mark for the issue, 1 mark for the action. When you go to the student, the third student will get 1 mark for a self-review threat, will get another 1 mark for a management threat, will get 1 mark for the safeguard, 1 mark for the safeguard of the self-review threat, and 1 mark for the safeguard of a management threat, 2. So this student is taking a total score of 4 marks. And yes, you can write a heading management threat even if you want to. So if you want to write a heading over here management threat, you can write a heading over here management threat. You can write a heading over here self-review threat if you want to. Self-review threat. So you can break that answer into 2 parts if you want to do that way. But tell me which student is giving a more impressive answer. So do you understand what is the literal meaning of the word develop your point reasonably and sync to case? So was the management threat sync to case or not? No, there is no maximum marks there is no maximum marks for a case, right? You need to identify as many issues as possible from within the situation. So I think the maximum situations was self-review, management threat, and 2 safeguards. I think that is the maximum we can do for this situation, right? So is everyone clear with this demonstration? Has this opened your mindset, everyone? So will everyone remember the marking scheme now? You have 1 mark per issue, well explained, and you have 1 mark per action recommended. Is everyone clear? Can we move on? Okay, so you find my perspective implementing in exam paper, how to develop a point. Okay, that's great. So this is the marking scheme, right? You have to follow in the exam paper for ethical issues and for professional issues. Now move to the next example. Now, there is an article by the examiner, which is an exam technique article part 1. Exam technique article part 1. Exam technique article part 1. Right? And this exam technique article part 1 is on ethics. I would recommend all of you, if you have not read this article before, to read this article after the webinar ends today. In the next 24 hours, please do read this article, right? You need to read this article. The reason why you read this article is that this article will tell you about the do's and don'ts of the examiner, and the examiner will give you examples of how you write a good answer on ethics. So if you want to see the examples of how to write a good answer on ethics, please read this article so you can really refine your answers. So this is a wonderful reading. I prefer you all do it if you have not done it before. You might be giving AAA for the first time and you've not yet read this article, right? This article has already been shared with all of you. Okay, just one last thing before we take on the exam paper. Right, so this is next, the last thing. Now, when you know the exam technique article, you know how to write an answer on ethics, you have read the article and you have attended the webinar and you know the way of writing the answer in an organized manner and how to score 1 mark for an issue and 1 mark for an action, you need to do ample practice for this topic. The ample practice for this topic I would recommend is that do all recent papers. Do all recent papers. Right? You do all recent papers. Which recent papers will you do for ethics? You start from September 18 first, then you go to December 18, then you go to the March, June 19 next, then you go to the September, December 19 next, then you go to the March 20 paper uploaded on ACCA website and the final September, December 2020 paper. I think this is sufficient. If you just practice all these papers for ethical, professional, and quality control issues, this is a reasonable and a fair practice for your June 2021 exams. Is that clear to all of you? The definition of an ample practice for the topic we're going through in the webinar today. Okay, and please do read the article part 1 ethics, which is very, very important, right? Okay, moving on. Let's start with the practice. And let's start practice with September 18, question number 1, actually. Because that will give you a real exam rigor of what I'm trying to explain you, and a real exam rigor of what is basically the meaning of the word professional issues. Just before I step into the question, I believe students in journally are very good when they look at the term ethical issues. The student comfort level is very good with ethical issues. Am I right? Students comfort level with ethical issues is far better because you do that in the AA paper even. But and you're very good on it. You identify them. The only thing you're bad at it is explaining. But I think 100% students identify the ethical issues. But the bad side of the student is explaining the ethical issue. So I think that if you look at the student comfort level on ethical issues, if I can just make a table here and guide you something in a very effective manner. Uh, okay, just let me insert a table over here and then discuss something with you. Okay, if you look at the ethical issues, I think in terms of identifying, the students are good. I hope you agree. But in terms of explaining, the students are weaker. And that's where I just guided you above how to explain, right? So I hope you got some relevance of explaining. You got some relevance of how you develop a point. And I will still be doing a practice from September 18, question number 1, and the December 18, question number 3 to make you stronger on explaining. But I hope you agree with identifying good and explaining weaker. Is that mostly where the students are? Do you agree with this phenomena? Okay, that's great, Salva, if you agree 100%. Okay, because it's very difficult to get a 100% agreement from a student, but that's good. Okay, look at the next term, professional issues. Professional issues. Identifying. The students are bad at identifying professional issues. They are confused at identifying professional issues. They even don't know what are professional issues, don't know what they are. Question mark. Explaining. If they're bad at identifying, explaining is a big cross. I hope you agree with this. And that's where the webinar is. That's where the day 2 is, to guide you about how you can improve your comfort level on ethical and professional issues. The students are bad confused, they don't know what professional issues are. I hope you all agree with me. And explaining, if you're bad at identifying, what will you explain? Explaining is a big danger here. Explaining is a big danger here, right? So should we mitigate this table in the next 1 hour? Should we find a better mitigation of this table in the next 1 hour? Should I make you stronger? Should I make you stronger in ethical issues? Number one. And should I make you better in identifying the professional issues? Number two, right? So let's start the journey. I need to give you a break as well. So I just need to keep an eye on my watch as well. So another 10 minutes to the break, right? So we can start on with the practice of the September 18 question number one. And the practice will guide you about the student comfort level improving. So let's start the first practice, September 18 question number one. Let me take it on the fresh page and we'll start the journey. Okay, September 18 question number one. Okay, I'm putting the question on the practice platform. We have to do it on the practice platform, right? Okay, so let's go down to the practice platform again. Uh, okay, we have the practice platform. We come back to it. We go to the catalog, Advanced Audit and Assurance, and we have the international paper, ACC official resources, past exam papers, and we need to click on the September 18 paper again. So I assign the September 18 paper, I go to the left-hand side, and I find the September 18 paper assigned. So I open the September 18 paper, I start the September 18 paper from zero. Now this, try to understand one thing, which I didn't guided you in my first 2 days. Whenever you open a paper or you open a paper in the actual exam, the very first screen you are looking for right in front of you is an instruction screen. You have 10 minutes to read instruction. The total time you have for a computer-based exam is 205 minutes, where 10 minutes is for reading the instructions and 195 minutes is what you have for reading, planning, and writing the answer. So actually in the pen and paper exams, you used to have 195 minutes, right? I hope you agree. But in the computer-based exams, you have 10 minutes extra. But those extra 10 minutes is for reading the instructions, right? So you read the instruction. See, this is the instruction screen. You read it and you click next. Then you come to the next instruction screen, you read it and you click next. You read the next instruction screen, you click next. Next instruction, next. Another instructions, next. And then automatically you come to the final page and you click next and your paper will start. This is the start of the paper. You click next and it says, if you are ready to begin your exams, please click yes. So the moment you click yes, your 195 minutes start and you click yes. So you start with section A. And in the section A, you go down and you come to the question number one, which I want to solve with you. Now, I have already guided you what you read first and what you read second on my day one. I hope you all remember. So I'm not guiding you on that. I'm directly taking on the partner email. When you open the partner email, you come to know what is the requirement. Now, the requirement in the partner email is that you have to prepare a briefing note. All of you know that. Every time the question number one is to be done in a format of a briefing note. So we have to prepare a briefing note, but we are looking for one requirement of a briefing note, which is the requirement number D. When you look at the requirement number D, it says, after considering the request in Exhibit 2. So that means when we are answering the requirement D, should we only refer to Exhibit 2, everyone? After considering the request in Exhibit 2 from the Group Finance Director, in respect of our firm providing advice on the Group Integrated Report, discuss the ethical and professional implications of the request, recommend any actions to be taken by the firm. So, discuss the ethical and professional implications and recommend actions. Control C, copy and paste. After considering the request in Exhibit 2, so will the answer be in the Exhibit 2, everyone? Should I just read the Exhibit 2 for getting my 6 marks answer on discuss the ethical issues for providing advice on the integrated report, right? Okay, so you go to your briefing note and you open up your briefing note. just like I've guided you in the previous days. Again, you choose the paragraph quickly, heading number 3. You quickly write briefing note on the top, briefing note, and you say to, you say from, you say date, sorry, you say subject, you say introduction, whatever that is, you keep filling it, and you come to the requirement A, you come to the requirement B, we're not doing it, we come to the requirement C, we're not even doing this, we come to the requirement D, which I'm doing, copy paste. So I paste my requirement over here. I need to go back to my question and I copy the requirement from here, Control C, and I go back to my word processor and I paste it over here, Control V. So my briefing note is ready. So you prepare a briefing note. How many times have I guided you since the last 2 days, right, to make a briefing note? And once you complete the requirement D, which I am completing with you, you write a conclusion at the end of the briefing note, right? So every day I've guided you about the structure of the briefing note. I hope you're now familiar with it. And you copy paste the question. Discuss the ethical and professional issues. So you're discussing the ethical issues, you're discussing the professional issues, and you're recommending actions. How many marks we have for this? Just 6. So not much. So that's 6 marks to gain. Now you go back to the exhibit 2. The exhibit 2 is the background information. You open the exhibit 2. I've guided about conclusions, Sanoop, in my March 21 webinar, so kindly see that. Okay, you go to the exhibit 2, you scroll down, and can you find a paragraph over here about integrated reporting? Because we need to find the ethical and professional issues from integrated reporting. So that's where I need to stop on. So I just highlight integrated reporting and I'll just read integrated reporting to identify ethical and professional issues. I'm just giving you 2 minutes. If you can see this in front of your screen very carefully, if I can just zoom that up a bit. Can all of you see the integrated reporting paragraph in front of your screen? Can you just read that in 2 minutes and identify the ethical and professional issues before I start to identify it? You have 2 minutes. Your time starts now. Identify. 2 minutes. Okay, if you have read it, let's start finding the answers. Right now, it's my time. Listen to me. If you have any questions, ask your questions after 5 minutes, right? Now we need to work on the ethical and professional issues. We have 6 marks to attain. Let's see how we go down with it. The group is proud. Just let me reduce the size of the window I have over here. Okay, just let me reduce it to this much. Okay, and just let it bring me down. I have my briefing note in the background, so I need to write the answer in the briefing note. Okay, the group is proud of this innovation and is keen to highlight these technological developments in the integrated report. So that's wonderful. The group finance director has asked to lead the project tasked with producing the group's first integrated report. The finance director has sent the following request to the audit engagement partner. So the group finance director has requested the partner about something. Let's see what is the ethical and professional issues in this request to the partner. We would like your firm to assist. So that's one, us in developing our integrated report. So they want us to assist them in developing the integrated report, number one. So I'll copy this, assist in developing the integrated reports. That's number one that they want to do. Control C. I go back to my briefing note and I come under the D part and I put the heading, I put my control V here, assist in developing the integrated report. Let me increase the font size so it's visible to all of you, to heading number 2, and I scroll down. Now, assist in developing the integrated report is the first issue, and I write under this, assist in developing the integrated report, and I'll just write the first sentence, the request, sorry, just 1 minute. The request to assist, the request to assist in developing the integrated report will give rise to the management threat, as developing the integrated report is the is part of management responsibility, is part of management responsibility which has been given to the finance director. The request to assist in developing the integrated report will give rise to management threat, as developing the integrated report will give integrated report is part of management responsibility, and if the audit firm assist in this development, the audit firm will be assuming management responsibilities. So that's my 1 mark, bracket close, and I get my first 1 mark. I hope you're all clear with that. So assist in developing the integrated report. So that's number 1, right? And I go to the next point then, number 2. I go back to my case right here, and to provide assurance on it. We can provide assurance, that's part of the audit services, that we can provide assurance, but we cannot assist in developing the integrated report. Assurance we can give, that's what the auditor do, right? As we believe this will enhance the credibility of the information it contains. That's fine. Specifically, like we would like your input into the choice of the key performing indicator. Look at this. We would like your input on the choice of the key performing indicator. Do you believe this is another management threat? We would like your input in the choice of the key performance indicator. So if the audit firm is involved in the choice of key performing indicator, that's quite dangerous, because that's the management decision. So you highlight this to the examiner again, and you say further, if the audit firm is involved, if the audit firm is involved in the input into the choice of the key performing indicator, which is a pure management decision, the audit firm will be stepping into the role of management, and taking decisions which the management should have taken. So that's another example of a management threat, right? But see, how would I conclude it? The audit firm will be stepping into the role of the management and taking decisions which the management should have taken. This decision-making process will make audit firm familiar with management and their working, will make audit firm familiar with the management and give rise to familiarity threat. You will become sympathetic because you are working like a management. I hope you all agree with me. When you're working like a management, you are involved in the decision making process, you will automatically become familiar with the management because you're working with them. And this will give rise to a familiarity threat, as the audit firm will become as the audit firm will become too sympathetic, too sympathetic, too sympathetic towards management by taking decisions on their behalf, decisions on their behalf, right? So I'm deliberately doing the spelling mistakes as well. So you know that spellings are not accounted for. It's your uh, answer which gives you the marks. So you assume the management responsibility, and then in the second case, you will be familiar with the management, which gives rise to a familiarity threat. I'm just highlighting this. You're not highlighting this in the exam paper, but I'm just highlighting this to show you that this is giving us me another 1 mark here. So I hope you agree with me, right? I go back to my we would like your input into the choice of the key performing indicators which would be presented and how to present them and how they should be reconciled where relevant to the financial information from the audited financial statement. So will this performance indicator be extracted from the financial information in the audited financial statement? Will that give rise to a self-review threat? Because the auditor must have already audited the financial statement, and the auditor will be reluctant to review the performance indicator in the integrated report. So are they extracting the performance indicators from the financial information from the audited report? Right? So financial information from the audited financial statement. So the key performance indicators will be extracted from the financial information from the audited financial statements. Next point. Control V. Let me enlarge the size. No, because you're giving the advice, it's giving rise to a management threat because you're involved in the decision-making process, right? I'm just taking your questions in 1 minute, right? Let me complete the question first. Financial information from the audited financial statements. The key performance indicators, the key performance indicators for integrated report will be extracted, will be extracted from the financial information in the audited financial statements. This will give rise to self-review threat. This will give rise to a self-review threat as the auditor will be reluctant to review, the auditor will be reluctant to review the KPIs in the integrated report when giving assurance, when giving assurance, knowing that they have been extracted, they have been extracted from the financial statements audited by them, from the financial statements audited by them. So will that make auditor reluctant? Because the auditor knows that the KPIs have been taken from the audited financial statement. So when the auditor is giving an assurance on the integrated report, will the auditor be critically evaluating the KPIs? Will the auditor deeply analyzing the KPIs? No, because he knows these KPIs have been taken from the financial statements audited by them. So will that make auditor reluctant? So will that give rise to a self-review threat? 1 mark. So we have wrote 3 ethical issues, one being the management responsibility, one being the familiarity threat, one being the self-review threat. Further, if the request for if the request for assisting the if the request for assisting in developing the integrated report is accepted, it will generate more income or fees for the audit firm from the audit firm as the company is already their audit client, so will more income come to you? If a request for assisting in developing the integrated report is accepted, it will generate more income for the audit firm as the company is already their audit client, which will give rise to self-interest threat, which will give rise to a self-interest threat, full stop. So more income will come to you if you accept it. Now you come to the safeguards. and because you tell them that assuming management responsibilities is prohibited. Assuming management responsibilities is prohibited. Let me just confirm one thing. If I'm not wrong, uh, this company, if I go back to the partner email just to confirm one thing from here. Okay, they have an audit committee, right? They have an audit committee that's been in the briefing note. So that is a better assumption to assume it is a listed company, right? So they have an audit committee. So my answer would say, assuming management responsibilities is prohibited primarily because the company or because the group is listed, because the group is a listed entity. Assuming management responsibilities is prohibited primarily because the group is a listed entity, so the audit firm cannot assist the group in uh, developing integrated report. However, the report can be developed. The report can be developed by the management and the audit firm, can only give assurance. And the audit firm can only give assurance as part of non-audit services. Is that clear to everyone? So you cannot step into the shoes of the management, right? It's a listed company. But if the management prepares the integrated report, you can give them an assurance. You can give them an assurance, right? That is possible. So you get 1 mark for writing the safeguard. So this is how you're formulating things into the case study. And you can also think about an advocacy threat here because you are assisting them. Assisting them means you're giving them a sort of an advice on how they should develop an integrated report. So a lot of students was asking me about advocacy threat. That is also possible, right? Because you are trying to promote the interest of the management. So do you believe it is the interest of the management that they want an integrated report? And if you assist them, is that promoting the interest of the management? So will this give rise to an advocacy threat as well, if you want to write that down? But are you finding a way of extracting answer and writing answer, everyone? Can you give headings in the exam paper? You can give headings over here, management threat, like this. You can give headings over here, familiarity threat. So the examiner can know which threats have you identified. Familiarity threat. You can give headings over here like self-interest threat. So your paragraphs can get break up. You can do the headings after you complete the answer in the computer-based exams. And then you write, sorry, this paragraph was about self-review threat. The next paragraph was about self-interest threat. And the next paragraph was about actions. Action came last, right? So how many marks have I got out of 6 by showing you a quick demonstration? You have to complete the 6 marks answer, right? I guided you about 5. Now, right after the break, I'll use the same question because the question was asking you identify and explain ethical and professional issues. We did identify the ethical issues, right? Do you agree? Do we identify we have written the actions? Yes, we have written the actions. But have we touched upon in the 6 marks answer any professional issues? No. So right after the break, what I will be guiding you is uh, that if the question is asking you ethical and professional issues, plus the actions, like the September 18 question, we have done justice to ethical issues, we have done justice to actions, but for professional issues, we have a big question mark. What is the suspense behind professional issues in this question we are attempting, September 18 question number 1A, and what learning will you get about professional issues? Because students are bad in identifying professional issues, and that continues. So right after the break, I'll be guiding you about the professional issues, right? And I'll be doing the December 18 paper as well. So take a break till 10:30 Pakistan Standard Time, a 15 minutes break, and be back to the classroom. I hope you will all be interested to knowing the professional issues from this paper we were attempting, right? There might be many professional issues, right? So Mary and Salva, please ensure you join after the break for knowing what are professional issues. So right after the break, we'll discuss that. Okay, I'll put the screen in front because a lot of student wants to copy the answer, so they can copy the answer from here. So I'll put the screen during the break, and you can copy the answer right from here, right? So off to a break, and 10:30 p.m. be back to the live class. Have all of you heard that? 10:30 p.m. back to the live class. 15 minutes, right? I'm muting my mic, and please drop your feedback for the overall session so far. That would really be helpful. How was the session so far? Please drop your feedback, and please watch the previous day's recordings as well if you missed them out. And I will resume back in 15 minutes after a short break. Thank you. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I hope all of you can hear me. Can you just confirm that? Okay, thank you. So we are back from the break and we are resuming the last part of the day three today. Now, just before the break, we were looking at the September 18, question number 1D, which was about the integrated reporting and the management asking the audit firm that can they assist them in developing the integrated report. And the question was asking you to identify the ethical and professional issues and recommend any action. We almost develop a 5 marks answer focusing on the management thread, the familiarity thread, the self-review thread. But I think the message you got right before the break, every threat I developed, was it just the identification of the threat, or does it have the explanation of why it is a threat? So did I just identify the threat, or did I explain why it is a threat? Was that the case every time I wrote for a 1 mark answer prior to the break? So every time you're picking up an ethical issue, you need to ensure that you explain it to get the full 1 mark. Now let's come back and see what basically are professional issues. Now you need to understand professional issues broadly. In whichever question the examiner asks you professional issues. I'm just taking an example from September 18 currently, the one we are doing. Question number one, and you can watch my previous webinars as well. I think I did explain about professional issues a lot more in my March 21 webinar even, but let me explain that in a different context this time. Professional issues, September 18, question number 1D. Do you all agree with me that in the September 18, question number 1D, the group has requested the audit firm to provide provide a non-audit service? Is that the case? Is that the summary of the case? The group has requested the audit firm to provide a non-audit service, which is to assist them in developing the integrated reporting. Is that a non-audit service? And are we already the auditor of the group? Do you all agree? Are we already performing the audit of the group? Right? So the group has requested the audit firm to provide a non-audit service, right? Now, in that request to provide the non-audit service, we have already identified the ethical issues in that request, right? We have identified that if we accept the request, it will give rise to self-review, self-interest, familiarity, management threat, etc. So the request to provide the non-audit service have already resulted in some of the ethical issues. But because the group has requested you to perform a non-audit service, you need to identify this request in the context of professional issues as well. Now, what basically are professional issues? Now, one of the most important professional issues is that because they are asking you to provide a non-audit service, and this is a fundamental part of your syllabus, which is known as practice management. Do you know the practice management syllabus area, right? Accepting a new audit client or accepting a service from an existing client. So the group has asked you to provide a non-audit service. What are professional issues? Because they've offered you to provide a non-audit service, some questions will come in the mindset of the partner. The very first question which will come in the mindset of the partner is, do we have competence over integrated reporting? Have we ever offered integrated reporting to any other client? Do we have competence on integrated reporting? If we have, then only we can accept the service, otherwise not. So do we have competence over integrated reporting? Have the audit firm ever offered integrated reporting services to other clients? They might have, they might not have, right? So do you understand? They were offering you a non-audit service, right? And as an audit firm, you will think, do we have competence over integrated reporting? Can we offer this service? Can we offer this non-audit service? Can we not offer this non-audit service? So can we offer, can we not? Is that a valid question which will come in the mindset of the partner? Can we offer or can we not? Is that right? Next, deadlines. What deadlines to complete work? What deadlines to complete work on the integrated service or on the non-audit service. What deadlines to complete work? Is it realistic deadline? Is it realistic deadline so we can perform work with quality? Is it realistic or not? So we can complete work. So whenever you get a request from the client, the request carry ethical problems which you need to identify from the case study, right? So the request carries ethical issues which you need to identify from the case. But most of the time, the professional issues are more of the book knowledge which you need to connect to the case, right? So you will think about your competence. No, you will write the action in the last, Rabia. That management responsibility is not allowed. That is an action. You first identify all the issues and then you write the action, right? So management responsibility is not allowed is the action you write in the last after you write all the ethical and professional issues. But first in the exam paper, you need to identify the issues. Suppose you start a 6 marks question and in the first line of the 6 marks question you write the management, you cannot assume the management responsibility full stop. How will you gain your 6 marks? So the action has to come in the end of your answer so you gain your 6 marks first by writing issues and then by writing actions. So is everyone clear what I was telling you in between the question I attended from Rabia Zen? That the ethical issues are given in the case paper and we identified them from the case, right? But most of the time, the professional issues is a book knowledge which you need to connect to the case. Read this line again. So do we have competence over integrated reporting? We need to connect that to the case study. What about the deadlines? Is the management telling us about the deadlines? Are the deadlines realistic or unrealistic? If they are realistic, we can accept it, otherwise we not. So these are basically the professional issues. More reliance on integrated reporting, by third parties, and the auditor liability. If the auditor gives a wrong assurance on the integrated report and the integrated report is relied by the third parties, can they file a case against the auditor? Can they make auditor liable? So is the auditor giving assurance on the integrated report? Yes. And do you believe integrated report is relied by numerous third parties? So will that increase the exposure of the auditor? Right? So auditor liability can also increase. That is another professional issue which you can highlight in the case study. Now, if I look at the 6 marks question, here, before I give you other examples of professional issues, if I look at the 6 marks question here, I had 6 marks, right? Now, in the 6 marks, you need to write ethical issues. In the 6 marks, you need to write the professional issues. In the 6 marks, you need to write the actions. Now it's totally up to you. How would you go about writing the answer? There can be multiple equations. The equation number one, for example, you can make your own probabilities just to clear a mindset of a student. Because a lot of times the students are so confused on this that they really make a mess in the exam paper. Insert a table. Okay, let me put some columns to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4. And let me put a row above. Okay. Just give me 1 minute. Okay. Now, suppose this is a situation one. This is a student one, right? And the student one wants to get 6 marks. Insert below. Okay, the student one wants to get 6 marks. How would a student one get a 6 marks? He write 5 ethical issues, no professional issue, and 1 action. That's one way of writing the answer. There is a second student in the exam hall who has well prepared himself or herself. He writes 4 ethical issues, 1 professional issue, and 2 actions, 6 marks. There is another student in the exam hall, student 3. The student 3 writes 3 ethical issues and he writes 2 professional issues and write 1 action, 6 marks. There is another student sitting in the exam hall, student 4. He writes just 2 ethical issues, he writes 3 professional issues, and he writes 1 ethical issues and scores 6 marks. So are you finding all of these students getting to the desired objective 6 marks? And all of them are correct. Because if in the exam paper there are many ethical issues and you just write ethical issues and you don't write any professional issues, that's perfectly fine. But examiner will not give you any negative marks because you have achieved the target of 6 marks from the case study. So can there be different ways of achieving the target? Student 1 achieved the target, student 2 achieved the target, student 3 achieved the target, student 4 achieved the target. So some students can write more professional issues and less ethical issues. Some write more ethical issues, less professional issues. But that is how you can bifurcate your answer. Okay, just in the student 2, sorry, 1, right? So are you finding different students getting to the score of 6? And so does that mitigate your question that should we forcefully write professional issues every time? You cannot, you can skip them even if you think the ethical issues have developed your answer. But you should have a sound mindset of what professional issues are. And if you can write them, that's wonderful. If you can relate them, that's wonderful. So in the question we were solving in September 18, can we just write about some professional issues this way? If I go back to the workspace and I can show you some answer on the workspace. See, right after my self-interest threat, I can put my cursor and I can write some more answer for September 18 paper. Self-interest threat, and I increase my font size and I start writing the answer. I start writing about competence, heading, and I write under. The audit firm need to consider their competence level for offering non-audit services, for offering non-audit services over integrated reporting, over integrated reporting. If the audit firm has desired experience into this type of service, in this type of service, then only the request can be accepted. Then only the request can be accepted. So you're telling examiner that the audit firm needs to look at their competence. So competence becomes their professional issue. Then you write the next one, reliance by the third party. Reliance by the third parties. You make this bigger. Heading 2, you come down and you write the answer. The audit firm need to be careful when providing assurance, when providing assurance on integrated reporting, as the integrated report will be relied upon. The integrated report will be relied upon by many stakeholders, which increases the liability exposure for the auditor, which increases the liability exposure for the auditor. Therefore, the auditor, if accepts the engagement, needs to exercise a greater due care, needs to exercise a greater due care, a greater due care. Full stop. See, I wrote 2 professional issues. So this is how you can formulate. You're not bifurcating the answer. This is an ethical issue and this is a professional issue. Anywhere in the answer I wrote, this is an ethical issue and this is the professional issue, or I was just explaining the issue and why it is an issue. I was not saying this is an ethical issue or this is a professional issue, right? Which most of the time the students keeps confusing at. Is everyone clear about my voice? Can you all hear me? Can you respond to me? Are you clear with competence and reliance by the third parties? Are you clear on the discussion of the professional issues I have with you so far? So please don't forcefully write a professional issue. If it is logical, if it is relatable, you can relate that to a case, write it. So something which is very, very important, which a student should learn about professional issues further. Let me continue that. Professional issues. Something you need to know more about professional issues today. That in terms of professional issues, uh, only write professional issues when they are relatable to the case. Only write when they relate with case, even though they come from the book knowledge, right? Competence, auditor liability, they're book knowledge, but you can relate them with the case study, right? Right? So only write when they relate with the case, as I just did for September 18 paper. You should know the broad examples. You should know the broad examples of professional issues so that you can fit them up. For example, the broad examples of professional issues is competence, deadlines, due care, professional skepticism, professional skepticism, professional behavior. They're all examples of professional issues, but you need to relate them with a case study if possible. Then only we'll score marks. So when you're writing a professional issue, it is very, very important that you explain why it is an issue. So competence can become an issue if you don't have competence. Even though you can accept the service, but you don't have competence, then do you believe competence is becoming a limiting factor in accepting a service? You have competence, but the deadlines are unrealistic. So do you believe the unrealistic deadlines is becoming an issue in acceptance of a service? Right? And please remember one thing. Look at this. Look at this. This is the student's confusion. This is the student confusion. Still, I'm getting these questions in my panel, and I need to address them because again, the problem remains the same. See, in a AAA paper, am I writing the answer this way? I'm making two columns. In one column, I write ethical issues, and in the other column, I write the professional issues. Is that the way I'm writing the answer? Am I doing the bifurcation of the issues, or am I telling examiner this is an issue and why it is an issue? Will the examiner reward me marks for the classification of the issue, or will the examiner reward me marks for explaining why it is an issue? Am I a manager in the AAA paper, or am I a junior in the AAA paper? So is that the right way to present an answer? Ethical issues and professional issues, is that the right way to bifurcate the answer? No, that's a total wrong way to write an answer. So let's put a big cross over here. A big cross. This is not the right way. Now, what's the right way? The right way is that you identify the issue, whatever the issue is, whether it is an ethical issue or a professional issue, whatever. You identify the issue and then you explain why it is an issue. There are no marks for classification of issue. Umar, can you just hold for 1 minute? Let me complete my sentence before I can respond to your question, right? Because if I respond to your question, I will get distracted from my writing I'm doing on the screen. So you identify the issue, whatever that is, ethical or professional, and you explain why it is an issue. There are no marks for the classification of the issue. So when I wrote my answer on the practice platform, did I bifurcated it? This is an ethical issue. This is a professional issue. No. Did I made the headings? Answer like this. Answer September 18. Question number 1D. Did I made headings like this? Ethical issues, professional issues. Did I made headings like this? And did I made headings like this when I was answering the paper? Because if you make headings like this, you're bifurcating. So is there a need for bifurcation? Understand, you are a manager, right? You are a manager, not a junior. If the junior is involved in the paper, then bifurcation is fine. In the AA paper, you are a junior. In the AAA paper, you are a manager. Try to understand your role. Right? So, Omar, I've responded to your question, right, in the chat box. Is that clear to everyone? Are you finding some better definition of professional issue, a better mindset of professional issues? That from a case study, first identify the ethical issues as we did in the time before the break, and then you recall your book knowledge. And if you think there is an element of competence which you can relate to the case, there is an element of a deadline you can relate to a case, there is an element of due care, there is an element of a liability you can relate to a case, then relate that to a case. Only if it is relatable. Now, look at my answer for September 18. Did I forcefully wrote competence? Or did I justify competence in the context of the case because integrated is a new phenomena? Integrated reporting is a new phenomena. So it's quite possible that the audit firm don't have the desired level of competence on integrated reporting because integrated reporting is a growing phenomena in the world. So is everyone clear on the discussion we had in the last 15-20 minutes on the professional issues? Are you clear? And you still need to watch my March 21 webinar, right? On how you go about professional issues in exam paper. So the final summary I would like to discuss and share with all of you is this. See, ethical and professional issues. Look at this structure and be very responsive to me. For example, you're a student and you are appearing for June exams, right? You read a case and you identify issues while you were reading case. Now, some of those issues were ethical. Some of those issues were ethical because a student can easily identify the ethical issue because the student knows the self-review, self-interest, familiarity, advocacy, intimidation. So some of these issues were ethical because student can pick them well wherever there is an ethical threat. So when you're reading the case, you can pick up the ethical issues very well because you are good on that. So the moment you find there is a self-review threat or the moment you find there is an advocacy threat, you immediately pick that issue because student can pick them well wherever there is an ethical threat and they go onto it. But when you're reading a case, there might be an issue which you have identified, which is not a self-review threat, which is not a self-interest threat, which is not an advocacy threat, which is not an intimidation threat, which is not a familiarity threat, but that is an issue in the context of the case. So there might be an issue in the case which is not an ethical issue, but you are sure this is an issue, but you are sure it is an issue. So will you be concerned about classifying the issue or will you just be concerned about explaining it to the examiner why it's an issue? So in a case paper, there might be 5 issues, and on the 4 issues you are very sound because you know this is a threat. But on the 5th issue, you know this is an issue, but you are confused. Is it an ethical issue? No. Is it a professional issue? Rather than being confused on the classification of the issue, is it better that you explain examiner why it is an issue to score you marks? Is that clear to all of you? Right? So read the case, identify the issues while you're reading the case, and some of the issues will be ethical, and you will be good on that because you know them. But there might be an issue in the case which is not an ethical issue. You're sure this is not an ethical issue. What will you do? Will you just skip it? Or will you still explain examiner that why it is an issue, irrespective whether it is an ethical issue or a professional issue? Right, Adil, that's the message, right? I've been talking about this for the last 5 minutes. You just need to focus on an issue and why, rather than telling examiner, no, this is an ethical issue, no, this is a professional issue. Are you getting marks for that? Are you getting marks for that, Adil? You're not getting any marks for the bifurcation. Try to understand your role in the AAA paper, Adil Naqvi. You are a manager. Do manager classify things? Do manager classify things? Or do the manager only explains and synthesize things? So your position is to synthesize. Your position is to explain. Your position is to evaluate rather than classify. I hope you're all clear on that, right? So read, number one, identify, number two, some of these issues will be ethical and you will be wonderfully good on that. But there might be some issues in the case which is not an ethical issue, but you're sure it is an issue. So you just need to write that down and you need to explain why you think this is an issue and score your marks. Is that clear to everyone? And if there is no professional issue in the case, then can you relate your bookish knowledge as I relate in the September 18 paper? In the September 18 paper, was there any professional issue when I was reading the case? Tell me. When I was reading the case in the September 18 paper, right here, look at this. When I was reading the case, was there any professional issue in this paper? Integrated reporting. But did I connected my bookish knowledge about competence, about deadlines, about the third parties? But was that a logical connection to the case study? Was that a logical connection to the case study? Yes or no? Definitely yes, right? So even if there is zero professional issues in the case, there is no professional issue identifiable in the case, you can relate that with your bookish knowledge and construct an answer in a logical manner, just as I did for September 18 paper. So all of you tell me, then when you were reading the September 18 paper, did you identify any professional issue while you were reading it from the case study? The answer has to be a big no. But did we connected the bookish knowledge and found a good answer for integrated reporting in terms of professional issues? So is everyone clear now in the context of the time constraint we have in the webinar? Right now, let's do the same exercise on another past paper, right? Okay, I'll just do one thing because I wrote my answer here, and this answer needs to be with you after the webinar. So I'm just copying this answer from the Word file, from the word processor, Control C, and I'm putting this answer on my Word file, which I'll share with you, right? So you get this answer. Answer, question 1D, September 18. So because you will be getting this answer. See, I've pasted my answer I wrote on the word processor, right on my Microsoft Word. So at the end of the day, you get this answer when I share this file with you. So at least if any one of you has missed the answer, you can still track the answer. Is that good for every one of you? Right, just let me formulate the headings and make it more presentable for you. So when you get this Word file, it's in a presentable form. Introduction, A, B, C, and we wrote the answer for D, and this is how we formulated the answer for D, right? So you will get this answer, right? No worries now. Okay, let's go to the next question. From the practice platform, we have December 18 paper on store. So let's go back to the practice platform. Let's open another question this time. You go back to the AAA, International ACC official resources, past exam papers, and you open the December 18 paper, assign. In the left panel, you will have the assigned paper. You click on the assigned papers, December 18, and you resume the December 18 paper. And this is the December 18 paper. You click on the next. We are not doing question number 1. We're doing the question number 3 from the December 18 paper. So you click another next. You come to the section B. You click next. You come to the question number 2 of the December 18 paper. You click next and you come to the question 3 of the December 18 paper, right? Now, when you're reading the question 3 of the December 18 paper, let's look at the requirements. You click on the requirements open up, and you start reading the requirements. Look at the requirement number B2 here. Let me highlight that for you. Comment on the ethical and professional issues arising from the review of the audit working papers and recommend actions which should be taken. Comment on the ethical and professional issues arising from the review of the audit working papers and recommend actions. Look at this. From the review of the audit working papers. So in the case, when I'm reading the case, in the case, when I find a paragraph on the review of the working papers, should I stop there? And from the review of the working papers, I need to find the professional issues. And from the review of the working papers, I need to find the ethical issues. And I need to recommend actions. How many marks? 15. So a long answer. So 1 mark for an issue, 1 mark for an action, and you need to accumulate them to 15 marks, 1 5. I will do some part of it and you will carry on. Is that clear to all of you? So should we start the journey on this question, everyone? Okay, let's start the journey. We have very less time remaining, so I need just to take a start and you continue. Okay, so this is the question. I copy the question and I go to my word processor, and in my word processor, I copied the question here. So in my word processor, I copied the question right over here. I increase the font size to heading number 3, so it's visible to all of you. And I have 15 marks to score on this question. Now, this is the requirement number B2. So I have to tell examiner B2. So when the marker is checking the paper, he knows this is the B2. Okay, now I need to write an answer. Comment on the ethical and professional issues and actions uh, from the review of the working paper. So I go back to the case paper now. I have an exhibit 1 and I have an exhibit 2. Can you see the exhibit 2 which says review notes, which is the review of the working paper? So should I open the exhibit 1, the background, or should I open the exhibit 2, review notes? Because the question is saying from the review of the working paper. So when I look at the word review of the working paper, which exhibit should I open for answering the question B2? Exhibit 1 or 2? Exhibit 2. Is everyone clear on that? Okay, so I open my exhibit 2 right here on the screen, and I need to find the ethical and professional issues. Right here. Okay, can you just read this exhibit 2 in 5 minutes in front of your screen, everyone? Just let me put it on the screen for you. Okay, can you all see this? And can you read this in the next 3 to 4 minutes before I take a start? Just read this situation and see how many issues can you identify, irrespective whether that is an ethical issue or that is a professional issue. Try to identify as many issues as possible. You have 3 minutes to read it. Start, everyone. Yes, it has appeared on the screen now, right, Salva? I hope all of you can see this question on the screen. Okay, start reading. You have 3 minutes from now, everyone. Okay, that's great, right? So, how much have you read? It's good. And a lot of good answers are coming from the students saying there is a money laundering issue. There is a personal taxation services invoice to the company, which is wrong. So, good answers from you, Aisha. Self-review management, self-interest and familiarity thread from Sukena. That is right answers. Uh, Aisha is saying self-review thread in a website development and expertise issues. That's good, Yolanda. And professional behavior will be compromised. Okay, that's good. Uh, and Bahawal is saying this question highlights many issues. So good. You have 15 marks to score, right? Let's get on track. Let's see how much can we do in the time we are left with. You review your review of the audit working paper and an initial meeting with Mr. Blacker have identified the following potential issues. Following your review of the audit engagement letter and the working papers of the taxation section of the audit file, you have established that Thompson and Company, which is the audit firm, performed the taxation computation of clean company. So you have established that the audit firm is performing the tax computation for clean company. Do you believe if the audit firm is performing the tax computation for clean company, will it give rise to a self-review thread because taxation will be a liability and an expense in the financial statement? So if you're computing the taxation, will it give rise to a self-review thread? Is that right? Okay, so that's the first problem. Establish that Thompson and Company is providing taxation services to clean company. Control C, word processor, and I got my first point. So in the exam, you can just first jot the points before you start writing the answer. You go back to the case study and you get the next point. And completed the tax return for both the company and Mr. Blacker personally. Now try to understand a rule of thumb. The audit firm can perform personal computation of taxes. That's allowed, that's permissible. But the audit firm cannot perform the tax computation for a client which is listed because it will give rise to a self-review threat because that number will be reflected in the balance sheet and in the income statement and you will be reluctant to perform the audit. But can you perform personal taxation of the employees or Mr. Blacker? Yes. So personal is allowed, but for the company, it will give rise to a self-review threat. Is that clear to everyone? So we are performing the computation for the audit firm and we are for the company, sorry, and we are performing the tax computation for Mr. Blacker. So Mr. Blacker is fine, but the company is wrong. Move on. All the taxation services have been invoiced to clean company. Is that right? All the taxation services have been invoiced to clean company as part of the total fees for the audit? Should we invoice the service offered to Blacker to clean company or should we invoice the service offered to Blacker? Is that wrong? Is that wrong? Taxation services has been invoiced to clean company. All the taxation services has been invoiced to clean company as part of the total fees for the audit. So that's a major issue. Control C. I go back to my document and I write my next point here. So I remember that when I come back writing my 15 marks answer. So in an exam, when you're reading the case, you can just copy paste the points to your word processor. So later when you write a 15 marks answer, you exactly recall the points, right? Is that the good way of copy pasting the points to your word processor? So you remember later to develop them into an answer, right? Okay, you move back. Next. Mr. Blacker personal tax return includes a number of significant number of transactions involving purchase and sales of property in various international locations. Is that a risk of money laundering? Is that a risk of layering that he's doing a lot of purchase and sales of property in various international locations? Is that giving a rise to integrity of Mr. Blacker that he might be involved in money laundering? So is that an issue? Irrespective, is it an ethical issue or a professional issue? Is that an issue? So should we identify the issue or a class of issue? So we put a control C, we go back to the word processor and we write here control V. We found a third issue. You go back to the case study and you start reading more. The taxation working papers include a review of number of offshore bank accounts in Mr. Blacker name. Mr. Blacker has a number of offshore bank accounts in Mr. Blacker name, is that another risk of money laundering activities, right? So is that another point? Control C, and I go back to my word processor and I paste it over here. Now see, in the exam, when you're reading, will this copy paste help you after the reading time is over and you start writing the answer? Can you develop these points into a logical marks then? Mr. Blacker can be a significant member of the management team and he could influence the objectivity of the audit firm. That's perfectly right, Mary. Moving on, next point. During your initial meeting with Mr. Blacker, he informed you that Clean Company is planning to develop a new website in order to offer online sales to its customer. Okay, that's good. He has asked Thomas to provide assistance with the design and implementation of the website and online system. Asked Thomas to provide assistance with the design, management threat, implementation, management threat, and later a self-review threat because it's an online sales system. So when you come for the audit next year, will you be reluctant to review the sales number? Will you be reluctant to review the sales number because you know this is a system which you have designed and implemented? So do you believe this will give rise to a self-review threat? The team will not be identifying any issues in the online systems when they come for the audit next year. So how many issues we have here? Provide assistance with design and implementation. Control C. You take it to the Word file and you put it paste over here. And sorry, just 1 minute. I didn't copy it well. Let me go back to my review notes. Copy, and you copy here. Control C, and you move back to your word processor and you paste your answer here. Control V, and just to remember, you write over here management threat so that when you come to writing, you know it. Management threat, self-review, self-review threat, management threat, right? Because they have asked you to provide assistance with the implementation of the website and the sales system, and even a self-interest threat. Will you get extra income from this service if you offer them? So are you finding one way what am I doing which you should do exactly, that when you are reading an exhibit in an exam paper, can you copy information from that exhibit to your word processor, because that can really help you when you start writing the answer? Is that an helpful exercise? Okay, move back. Next, last paragraph. As a result of your year-end review visit at the client premises, you have learned that the audit team was invited to and subsequently attended Clean Company's annual office party. The audit team was invited and they attended a party. Is that a self-interest threat? Gifts and hospitality. Control C. You move back to the word processor. You put it over here. This is a gift and hospitality. You write under the bracket gift and hospitality, and gift and hospitality give rise to a self-interest threat, which is very dangerous for the audit team, and you close the bracket. You come back, the next point. The client provided each member of the audit team with a free voucher worth $30, which could be redeemed at the venue during the party. So that's a continuation of the gift and hospitality, right? They even provided them a $30 voucher, which they can redeem at the party. So that's a continuation of the same sentence. Self-interest threat. Move back. The audit senior, Paula, who has worked on the audit for the last 3 years, and has informed you that the audit team has always been encouraged to attend the parties in order to develop good client relationships. So is that a familiarity threat? Audit team has always been encouraged to attend these parties for a good client relationship. Is that giving rise to a familiarity threat of the audit team with the client? Do you all agree with it? So this gives rise to a familiarity threat. So now you have read the case, you close the case, review notes, and you close the window. Now you're writing the answer. You open your word processor, already the answer is there. Now, if you're a good student, you will quickly develop this answer into 15 marks. Now, just go one by one. Establish that Thomson Company provides the taxation services to compute the tax. Will it give rise to a self-review threat, taxation services? And is the taxation services giving also rise to a self-interest threat? Are you getting extra income for it? So you have a self-review and you have a self-interest. 2 marks. All taxation services have been billed to the Clean Company. This is wrong. This is the wrong practice. You will criticize it that the taxation services you have offered to Mr. Blacker should be invoiced to Mr. Blacker. So that's a wrong practice. Mr. Blacker tax return includes a number of suspicious transactions. So you will talk about the money laundering over here as one issue. You will talk about client integrity issues because Mr. Blacker is involved in money laundering possibly. So you will talk about the client integrity issue. You will also talk about reporting the matter to MLRO, reporting the matter to MLRO. Is that right? Will you report this matter to MLRO, Money Laundering Reporting Officer? Or will you directly tell client that you are involved in money laundering? Will you do the tip off? Will you be doing the tip off or will you be telling your MLRO everyone? The MLRO, right? Not telling directly the client that you are involved in money laundering. Okay, there are a number of offshore bank accounts in the name of Mr. Blacker, so that give rise to a suspicion that Mr. Blacker is involved in money laundering for sure. He is involved in layering of the black money to white money. Okay, Mr. Thomas has asked you to provide design and implementation of the website, management thread, self-review, self-interest. The audit team has been invited to the party, self-interest, and the team has been encouraged to attend the parties for good relationship, familiarity thread. See, I've just given you a rough sketch of the answer. If you can convert this, you can almost reach 15 marks if you keep writing actions. Heading number 2. Can I just copy this answer to my Word file so you get this answer and you can formulate this into a full answer later, everyone? This is just a sketch of question 3B from December 18 paper. Will you complete it as your assignment back at home, everyone? Will you be encouraged to draft an answer, all of you? Just give me 1 minute. If I can formulate this file in a very good manner, so when you get this file, you can take a printout and you can start attempting your answers in a good manner. September 18, and after the September 18, we have just done the sketch of the December 18. So have you got any benefit from this exercise? Have you got the way of reading the case, extracting the points? Now you have bullets. How many bullets you have on screen? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I think in some bullets we have more than 2 points and 3 points to write. So can you easily stretch your answer to 15 marks? So have you found the way of reading the question that when a question asks you to comment on ethical and professional issues, your focus has to be on issues, not on the classification. You just read the case, whatever you find from the case, identify it, and then start explaining it to the examiner along with actions to score your full 15 marks. Is that not an easy approach here? Are you all comfortable with what you learned from the day 3 today? Right, let me give you a summary and you complete this case yourself. Now, first of all, just before I wrap up my day 3 today, I want to discuss some few very important things, which is like an icing on the cake. And you should listen that before you exit. Day 3, listen to me carefully. Key learnings. Number 1, uh, over the day 3 today, have I encouraged you all to use the AAA CBE practice platform? And is that encouragement level going up and up every day? So are you all encouraged to use the practice platform? Is that right? And have you started using it? And are you finding some ease on the practice platform now? Everyone, waiting for your answers. Okay, that's good. Next, the key learning today is not just to encourage you all to use the AAA practice platform, but also an encouragement of how you go about doing analytical procedures using calculators if you want to do that, or using spreadsheet. Have I given you both the examples how you use the calculators and how you use the spreadsheets? doing the analytical procedures, and you have to choose the one which is best for you, right? So you have to do that from the day 3. Further, you need to conclude whether you will be using a calculator or a spreadsheet for the analytical procedures if that comes to your exam paper. Will you carry your own calculator to exam hall? You need to take a decision on that. So that was another important thing we came today, right? In terms of the rough papers, I was very clear that the rough papers will be available if you are going for computer-based exams at centers. The rough papers will be available to you and they will be taken away from you at the end of the exam. But if you are giving a computer-based exams which is remotely invigilated because of the COVID situations, then the rough papers will not be available. So you will not use the rough papers. Rather, you just directly copy paste things from your exhibits to the word processor. Do you believe the copy paste of information from exhibit to word processor saves your time when you later come writing the answer? Copy paste of information from exhibits to word processor later save time when you write answer? So is CB exams beneficial? You need to find the pros and cons of paper-based exams and computer-based exams. The copy paste is a wonderful function, right? The last thing, have you found a good definition of the marking schemes of ethical and professional issues today? Marking scheme for ethical and professional issues today. Have you found a definition of how to evaluate an ethical issue? How to evaluate an ethical issue? Have you found that? Have you found the way of identifying uh, sorry the way of I sorry have you got a good definition of what basically are professional issues today? Professional issues, have you got some examples today? Have that develop your mindset, everyone? And finally, have you got some key understandings today? No classification of issues, no classification of issues, only explain the issue and why it is an issue to score 1 mark, and there's 1 mark for writing an action. Now, one last thing before I wind up my session. Code of ethics is an area of a syllabus where every time I recommend student to read the textbook. Code of conduct is the only area of the syllabus where I recommend my students to read the chapter from the textbook, whichever textbook, BPP or Kaplan. Because there is so many rules you need to remember for a listed company and for a non-listed company. There are so much you need to remember for a safeguard. So it is very good that if you read the book chapter, you will know the safeguards for a listed company and for a non-listed company. You will know the different situations which can come to your exam paper. So as a tutor, I always recommend that code of conduct is an area where you should be good at from the book reading. And the last thing from the code of conduct is very important, which we did on the day 1 and the day 2. You know, there have been some changes in the code of conduct. There have been some changes in code of conduct, and there is an exposure draft to that, which we covered on the day 1 and day 2. I hope you all remember that. So that could be really important for your exams in June. So please ensure you know the exposure draft. Please ensure you know the changes which have come into the code of conduct. How many changes the code of conduct has introduced? Do you remember the exact number, everyone? I guided you on the day 1 and day 2. Exactly, very good. 5 changes. And have I given you a summary of that? Do you have a summary document? I hope you've taken a printout of that, right? Okay, that's great. So I hope you had a productive session today. You learned a lot from the session today. Can you give me a feedback quickly before I tell you the agenda of meeting tomorrow? Numan, you have to practice. The more you practice, your typing speed will be excellent. Your exams is on the 7th of June. You have more than a month to improve your typing speeds. Is that clear? Okay, now, just before you give me the feedback of the session today, I'm just telling you what's the agenda for tomorrow. You need to watch the previous webinars, right? Will you be watching the webinar for March 21 and December 20, everyone? Is that encourageable? Okay, good. Tomorrow we are meeting for something I didn't discuss in my last webinar, which is March 21 webinar, because in the last webinar I focused on other assignments a lot. So this time I thought it's better to discuss with you the procedures and evidence. So tomorrow I will be discussing with you procedures and evidence. I'll spend half the class tomorrow or half the session tomorrow on discussing procedures, and I'll discuss half the session tomorrow on discussing audit evidence. Because in the last webinar for March 21, I focused on other assignments. So that's the agenda for tomorrow. Come prepared with it so we can have an interactive session tomorrow. Thank you very much for participating, all of you, in the live webinar. And I'll see you all tomorrow with the day 4 of this ongoing AAA Practice to Pass for June 21 exams. I hope you had a productive learning session today in the last 3 hours, and you will be participating more in the next 2 days to come before you need to sit down and prepare well for your upcoming exams on the 7th of June, right? Do watch my March 21 webinar, do watch my December 20 webinar, because that will give you an excellent platform to prepare yourself for the June 2021 exams. Thank you so much, and I'll see you tomorrow back again, 8:30 p.m. Pakistan time. Take care of yourself and of your people around you. Have a nice day. Goodbye and Allah Hafiz.